Welcome to Business Learning Lab with Jen and Meredith. Today we are talking about whether or not it is time to exit your business. And I want to come at it from a couple perspectives. One, what are the signs that you might be ready to say goodbye to your business? And again, what are your options if it is time? I think sometimes as business owners, we are so committed to our businesses, we can't picture a day that we don't have them. And we think, and then there might come a time where you think you're straddled with them, that there is no option. You've committed this business for the rest of your life. And that is absolutely not the case. And even small business owners can have exit strategies. And you should. So, Meredith, we've been around the block a couple times, each of us with businesses independent of each other, and
Mhm.
now as partners in two companies. Tell me a little bit about why this topic is interesting to you.
Yes. So it's interesting for a couple reasons, as you mentioned. But back in the day, I had a company that had to get, well, I've shut down two companies actually. So I had my very first company, which was a nonprofit management consulting company,
Mhm.
and it did really well. And then it stopped doing so well. And I first company made a million mistakes as one does. And it got to the point where it was financially hitting a really hard time, and I was also super burnt out. It was
Mhm.
Working in
Yeah.
nonprofits can be very stressful, so I had to just sort of make this decision of what to do. And in that case, I went nuclear. I just shut the whole thing down, just washed my hands of it, and I went and got a 9 to 5 desk job in an office. It was just like done with running my own company, being an entrepreneur. Because I was super burnt out, and I knew nothing about balance, and I was like, whatever, 27 or something, I don't know. So that's one way to do it. Honestly, the best
Not
way.
the way that I recommend, but yes, that is one way that happens quite frequently.
Yes. And then about 6 years ago, so the company I started after that company, after I got through the burnout, was a publishing company. Working with fiction authors, and that's also a hard lift. That is a business model, and I had started a sort of an imprint, which is what like a sub brand is called in publishing, called Eaton Press, and that worked with for profit or nonfiction, for profit for sure, for profit nonfiction writers. Anyway, and in that case, the work I was doing with the Eaton Press imprint was much more satisfying, profitable, engaging, all that stuff. And so I essentially shut down the first company, but really what I did was I did shut it down for paperwork reasons, but turned Eaton Press, took it as this imprint, made it its own company, which is still going today. And that was a better way. It was more of an evolution, but it was nice to not do a name change, like to just actually have that delineation where it was like this part ends, this part
Mhm.
begins anew with a new EIN, a new plan, all that kind of stuff. So that's two ways that I've gone through it, and you of course have had two other ways you've exited a business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I sold my first business and I found that was rewarding. And I was ready to exit that business because I was just ready to do something different. I wasn't working a lot of hours in the business. It was profitable. I was making a salary. It was for all intents and purposes a successful story, and I love the entire experience that I had with that business. But I had it 11 years, and I was kind of ready just to do something different and explore other entrepreneurial opportunities and just see what else the world had to offer. I felt like the world was my oyster. So in that case, I had built a really viable company, and I was able to sell it pretty quickly. Later on, I've had, I later had a co-working space for the creative class, so artists, musicians, artisans. And that I was so passionate about it, and it was just an idea that I couldn't let go. But the business financially did not work out. I ran out of money before I could make that business profitable. And so in that case, I did not have an asset to sell. It sort of imploded pretty quickly. When you're out of money, you're out of money. When you've seen it in all sizes of companies, your company can kind of just implode pretty quickly in that scenario when you can't make payroll, when you can't cover your bills, you can't make your rent. It's all over, Johnny. So it was a much less graceful exit in that business. And looking back, this is a situation that I want to talk about today, is when your business is not profitable and it's becoming a financial drain, and you're not able to make it profitable quickly enough. That is a time to exit. I actually wish I had exited that business more gracefully. And I knew the numbers, but I tend to wear rose-colored glasses sometimes, and I believed in the business and the premise and the people and the community that I was building so much that I was listening to the messaging of like, just when you think you're you're going to fail, that's where success is, on the other side of that wall. Like I was hearing those messages, and those messages are very enticing. And I was like, well, I'm just going to double down on me. And, actually it was the wrong move. I would have lost a lot less money. I maybe could have exited more gracefully if I had decided, hey, let's pass this torch onto somebody that has more money to invest, who believes in the concept but has more money than I do, or, just to shut it down more gracefully, where I had agency over the process, as opposed to like, oh crap, I'm out of options. Everything has to, we have to lock the door today. That was not an ideal situation. I would have done it, in retrospect, I would have done it so differently.
That's a good time to mention that. So part of the problem when shutting down a business, especially as entrepreneurs, when we start businesses that we feel emotionally connected to, which for most of us, that is at least how we start our first businesses. It gets really confusing of like, what is an emotional decision and what is an objective decision, what's business, what's personal. Like, it gets real mushy. And when I shut down my second company and turned it into Eaton Press, that was the hardest part about it, and it was, I didn't really like the work. It was financially fine. It wasn't in dire straits where I had no choice. It wasn't great. I wasn't like making tons of money from it. But it was my baby, right? And I had all these dreams and hopes and aspirations. And that is a very, very seductive place.
Oh, and I have another seduction. That is so seductive. And I was totally in that seduction, all of it. And then the other thing that was a seduction was that I had already invested so much money. I was into that business for about $300,000. And this was not like, this was money that I had worked hard in, my previous business to earn. And I was investing in this business, and it was so hard to walk away from that loss. Like, not being like to accept the fact that I wasn't going to be able to recoup it. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I just had this like flicker of hope that, if I just did this, if I just worked a little harder, if, we adjusted this, if we put this out in the world, like that, something was going to happen to turn the ship around, and it didn't. And so it was a very hard lesson to learn. I like to think that I got $300,000 worth of business knowledge out of the experience, because there is no way that I would do that again. There's no possible way that I would be seduced in those ways again. I'm a much more seasoned and wise business owner now, but it was a painful process and a painful exit.
And those are sometimes the best lessons to learn, but yeah, they're the most painful lessons to learn. And the concept that you bring up is this notion of a sunk cost. And
Yeah.
that was for me when I really understood the concept of a sunk cost is a way to help separate some of that emotional from the objective. And so like the money you had invested was invested. It was gone.
It was
Nothing you
gone.
were going to do was going to bring that back. And you can argue, well, but if you get a return on your investment, you do bring it back. You don't actually. That is new money. You have to look at that as future earnings, new money. It does not replace that old money. And so when you're in that situation, and that's when it can be the most seductive too, because it's like you want to fix it. You want to get back your money. You went into it expecting to get back the money to like have it be the same. And so to really fully understand this concept of a sunk cost, it's done. What's done is done. Nothing you do going forward changes what's done. So once you look at it that way, and then you have two choices. You can continue to dump money, you can in time and resources and sink more into it. That's a choice for other potential future outcomes, or you can walk away.
Yeah.
But those are your two options. Those are always, only, ever your two options.
Yeah,
And
that's so true. It is so true. And tied up in all of that experience. And again, I'm sharing this because I think there are business owners out there that are probably in similar circumstances right now where they're stressed because their business isn't making money. And so they're investing personal money into it and they're hoping that it will eventually be profitable. And you know, when you're not talking about like playing with investor money, when you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur, as I have always been, as you have always been, it's a different story, right? Because you're using your personal funds. So the other thing that I guess the third seduction, this sounds like a blog post, the three
yes,
seductions of business failure. Well, and that's the seduction is the failure. Like I
yes,
don't want to fail. Like this would be such a failure. I have to keep going. Like because otherwise it's going to be a failure. And that was a huge fear of mine. I hadn't really had a lot of huge failures under my belt. Little ones, yeah, of course, but not like a major failures. I'd had a successful business. There wasn't really that experience to draw from. So to me, it felt like death.
yeah,
And then ultimately, when it did fail, and I didn't die, I realized, oh, like, why didn't I just succumb to this like a little sooner? It would have been a lot less painful. But I
yeah,
think we do get caught up in the sunk cost, in the emotional seduction of like, hey, this is our business, our baby, we can make this into something, and then also the fear of failure.
exactly. And we keep telling ourselves, if I fix it, it'll hide the mistake that got me to this place, which is just another way of arguing around a sunk cost because it won't matter that I lost all that money if I make it up with new money. But anyway, so we were going to talk about, so that's just, this is why this is an important topic to us. We've learned the lessons, we know. So like, in a way to try to destigmatize this notion of the embarrassment and the fear and the emotion, the negative emotions that can be wrapped up in deciding to exit a business. And certainly one of the best ways, like if you could wave a magic wand and choose to exit a business in any way you want, I think most people would agree one of the best ways to do it is to sell it. To be able to hand it off to someone. It's not your problem anymore. It's somebody else's problem.
Absolutely. Like a business that you walk away from because it's financially not successful and you've run out of money, or a business that you've walked away from because you're burned out and you can't take it anymore. Those are worst case scenarios, right? And you actually don't need the magic wand, right? Like you can build a sustainable business into an asset. And I think, before I delegated in my first business, I tell this story all the time. I had just DIY'd myself a terrible job. It was a business, technically, it had a business license, but I was the entire business. And I was working, ridiculous hours, 7 days a week. And it was awful. And it wasn't until I delegated and got systems and I got standard operating procedures and I got processes in place and hired a really good team that I actually had a business and I had an asset that could be sold. So, and at the time that I was was doing those things in my business, I was doing them because I was burnt out and I knew that I either had to stop completely or learn what it meant to have a business and start doing those things that business owners do, start acting like a CEO. And so I did that in order to, not be working all the hours, to grow a business that was financially viable. I didn't do it because I had planned to sell the business, but because I did those things, I did create an asset that was able to be sold. So I always tell business owners, build an asset. Don't make a job. Don't build yourself a job. Don't DIY yourself a career. A business should be an asset. It should be something that you value in that way. And when you start thinking about your business as an asset, you approach it completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you may never sell it, but it should always be built as if it will be sold.
Absolutely. It'll make a much stronger business, a much easier business to run. And should you, in life, circumstances can change overnight, right? We all know that. So you might have zero intention of ever selling this business. It's profitable. It's going great. And then something unexpected, something you couldn't have predicted happens. And all of a sudden, running this company isn't your priority, or it doesn't fit in your life the way it did before, or whatever, right? And so if you've already been acting as if, it's going to be so much easier to make that transition. I also think because setting it up that way, thinking in terms of this asset, thinking in terms of a day when you would get rid of it, also helps insulate you from some of that more emotional stuff.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Decisions, and you have to think, is this sustainable? Is this making a strong company? How would I justify this if I had to tell someone else about it? Or,
Excellent point, Meredith. Yes, treating your business like an asset, a separate entity. You are not your business. Don't be so emotionally tied in with that. That was a mistake I made with the business that ended not so gracefully. And I didn't have that relationship with the first business that I was able to sell. I was proud of it and I was attached to it when I was the only one in the business. Like when it was just me, I was kind of emotionally wrapped up in it. But burnout will, put your ball, your back against the wall and, force you to make important decisions. So there was that. But that's an important point. And, I think we need to understand that you have different seasons in life and it's okay to walk away from your business. We just, back in June, as some of you know, we purchased Move Forward Virtual Assistants. And the previous owner, Allison, there was no horror story there really. Like, she started this business. She's very entrepreneurial. It ran adjacent to a very successful private practice that she had. But over time, it became a distraction. It wasn't her first passion. Her successful group therapy practice was expanding. Now she's got 3 locations. I think, she opened, I think, the third one, maybe the second and third one after she sold this company, Move Forward. So she just was like, hey, this was cool. I started this, but it's not where I want to be spending my time or energy. It's kind of distracting me from my core work. It's time to sell it. And she had built an asset that she could sell. So she didn't have to burn it down and walk away. And, it wasn't a financial failure. So, again, one of the best case scenarios for a business owner is to have an asset for when you're ready to walk away, if you're ready to walk away. And I think, just in terms of building wealth, particularly for women, if you think of your business as part of your wealth portfolio, it changes everything. It changes your entire approach to how you envision your role in your company and then the decisions you make in terms of business development. So it's a game changer.
Yes, because all of a sudden, if you're really focusing on financial stability and financial growth, and some of this depends, when I was 27, 28 with my first company, that was like so far off, like thinking about financial stability and what if, having money saved was like so far away. But now it feels very, very important, like coming into, retirement is on the horizon, potential things that could stop me from working seem a lot more realistic than they did, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, you just never know, whatever. So, when I start looking and evaluating, we make decisions, and it's like, is this company part of my financial stability in the sense that it's giving me revenue, it's giving me a salary, or is it actually creating financial instability, and that there's always this risk that I'm going to have to put personal money in, that I'm going to end up with debt, that it how close is it to this like teetering point where it could go bad, it could go, if it's like with Move Forward, we have a pretty big gap between, good and bad. So it wouldn't happen overnight, which is great. And that's because it's, the way we build the company. But we also make decisions that help us keep that gap, and we're looking at benefits. And we had to sort of say, like, okay, look, we can't do everything we want to do because it puts our risk too high. So two things go wrong, all of a sudden we're in financial distress again. We're not doing that because we're not risking our personal financial stability for this company. So it helps a lot with, again, insulating from the emotion, understanding it as something outside of you. And we could do a whole other topic on like, you are not your business, like the identity role separation. But that, which gets real messy. But anyway, if you start,
I mean, that's I love all those points, Merit. That's great. Kiva had joined us. I think she's dropped off, but Kiva, who actually she's an operations consultant, brilliant. Kiva is brilliant. But she was actually the person who put us in contact with Allison when she was ready to sell her company. So have great people in your network. I mean, that's just like, that's a lesson we learn every day. Like, the people in your network are so valuable. Kiva's high value person in our network. She made that, she facilitated that whole purchase. Anyway, she says, such great advice. Built to Sell by John Warrillow. I'm not sure. I don't know if I've ever heard his name said out loud, so I'm not sure if I'm butchering it. But Built to Sell by John Warrillow is always recommended reading to clients. Yes. So and I think he is we're on the same page with John Warrillow in the sense that build your company to sell. It'll be a much more stable, viable, profitable business if you do that. I don't know if we covered all of our points. I feel like I got kind of fired up with on this topic, which when that happens, sometimes important points are lost, but that's okay. We're here every week, and we can pick up the slack if we need to. We so appreciate you being here, and we would love to hear about your business exits. If you're considering a business exit and you're not sure what to do, is it time to leave? Is it time to sell? Is it time to just, walk away? Mm-hmm. And that's that can be the hardest decision. Mm-hmm. We would love to chat with you about it. So, just follow us over on YouTube at Jen and Mayor, JENANDMER, and we'll respond to comments there. So, thanks everybody.
Great, thanks.
All right, bye.